So many of the victims spoken of in yesterday's hearing were young people, unsuspecting, minding their own business. Joining us now to discuss the criminal justice system more broadly, we're speaking with John Koufos, a criminal justice reform advocate and former criminal trial attorney. Good to have you with us today, John. What's the crux of the problem as you see it?
Sure. Well, there's really three separate problems we heard about, and I give Congressman Van Drew a lot of credit for holding that. He's a congressman in the district where I live in New Jersey. And the first issue is pretrial. So pretrial is what we talk about bail, right? You shouldn't be releasing people if they're dangerous. And if they are dangerous, you have to be able to somehow assess that danger. So in this situation with Arena, the person was let out with that promise to appear, which, given his background, would not have happened in a great majority of the states in America. And at the same time, no one said, this person, whether they have a mental illness or not, is not fit to be on the streets. That's the first issue. The second issue, we talked about the delay in trial from the other victim that testified, I think Miss Alderman. So the problem there is that cases, and I can tell you this having tried many, cases get worse for the prosecution over time. So time is almost always a friend of the defendant. So the idea that we're not moving cases fast enough is a second issue. And the third, and equally tragic, is what happened to Miss Federico. I mean, here's a person with 25 felonies. I mean, even in states like New Jersey, that person would have been in prison for an extended term. So the idea is to make sure that repeat offenders, particularly repeat violent offenders, receive long sentences. The number one predictor of recidivism in this context, obviously age is always the one, but what we're talking about here is certainty of punishment. And if we knew that people were going to trial quickly and punishment was certain, you'd see a reduction. But unfortunately, that's not happening here.
Okay, I'm sure there are quite a range of approaches that you've been digging into and you've seen and could recommend. You recently wrote an op-ed in USA Today about some of the positive changes that you see coming through recent federal action. Let's start with what actions you think will be felt most that are coming down the pipeline.
Sure. So President Trump's position on bail, even though bail is primarily a state issue, is, as I wrote in USA Today, is really going to catalyze the type of pretrial release system we need, which is based on danger above all else. Some of my criminal justice advocate friends might take a different approach. I come at it from public safety, right? If we're not keeping the community safe, the reform should not happen at all. So in this particular situation, we have, as we rethink these jurisdictions like New York, who abolished cash bail and put no risk assessment in, President Trump's executive order is going to move us to a place where risk becomes part and parcel to every pretrial release decision everywhere in America. And if we do that, we're going to have much safer streets.
Yes, that is a big one. And based on your experience working closely in so many different angles within this sector, what more do you think could be done to turn the tide and reduce violent crime?
Sure. So number one, again, bringing a danger-based system, a risk-based system to pretrial release decisions. Secondly, we need to fully fund prosecutors' offices, district attorneys, to hire the number of district attorneys they need to prosecute cases. Oftentimes, these delaying cases are simply because of bandwidth from the prosecutor's office. They don't have enough DAs, or the courts themselves. We have to bring justice. We have to speed up the justice process, right? Consistent with constitutional principles. And we have to have a really uncomfortable conversation in this country about juvenile crime, by the way, even though juveniles were not implicated in the subject of Jeff Van Drew's hearing. But we're seeing an uptick in juvenile violent crime, and the penalties are not matching sometimes the offense. So we need to rethink that. And we do need to build a better mental health system in this country. Now, that doesn't mean let people out with a piece of paper that says, yes, I promise to show up and I'm going to go to treatment. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if someone is a danger to the community because of a psychological issue, the handcuffs they wear to county jail should transport them to a locked-in mental health facility until they are receive the treatment they need to be fit to be incorporated back into society. I think that's what we need. And I think we're starting to see some of that. I mean, the president's executive orders on a number of fronts are going to bring us to that point, probably, I would say, next year or the year after.
Okay, very interesting. And I want to also ask you whether you think there's anything missing from this conversation more broadly around criminal justice, especially from your perspective. You have an extensive career in the criminal justice system, and you've also got your own personal experience having served time for drink driving. And I think, if I may ask you, how that might have shifted your perspective, if at all, on this issue?
Oh, of course you can ask. So yeah, so I'm one of the rare people, right, who tried big gang and organized crime cases, then was an inmate myself for drunk driving injury I caused. You know, the thing I learned in prison, learned a couple things in prison, but I'll tell you one of the things that jumped out at me is that, you know, there are people I was locked up with who, if you gave them treatment, wouldn't reoffend again, right? There were a subset of that population. But the uncomfortable truth is, and take it from a guy who did his time in general population, the uncomfortable truth is there is also a subset of the population that if you gave them a second chance on a silver platter, they're not taking it, right? And for those people, there's only one answer, which is time, right? That's the only thing you can do is specifically deter a small subset of the inmate population. So I think you have to look at it from both ends, right? Addiction treatment issues, mental health issues, second chance hiring, jobs. I mean, I'll tell you, when I was locked up, no one asked me for money, but nearly everybody asked me for a job. So that should tell you what the great majority of people in prison are trying to do. But we don't have a system that is equipped for the people who are released with no services and simply don't want a second chance. And I think we have to confront that, because when we don't confront the most violent offenders in our society, it prevents the ability to do meaningful reform for everybody else who's trying to do better in with their time.
Well, an important discussion, some sobering and very timely thoughts you're sharing with us today. Thank you so much for your time, John.
Thank you.
Koufos.